Okay, thanks for being here. So today we are talking about the three processes going on, basically. So we are going to focus on one, the de-dollarization. This process has already begun. So to understand this process in today's context, so let's go a little bit further in the history. What exactly happened? Let me start with you for the first slide. Okay, in 1913 in USA, a private bank was formed, was called Federal Reserve. Lots of people, including me, I was under the impression that Federal Reserve was a Bank of America, is owned by American government or people. But it is a private bank which lends money to the government. And it's owned by a very wealthy family, Rothschild, and who during the World War I from 1914 to 1918 doubled their money supply. How they did it? Because they increased the credit, which grew exponentially. They gave the loans at a very reasonable rates to people. So a lot of people, they obviously bought the loans to put in the stock market or their houses mortgage, whatever. So, and when they were doing it, it's the first time they did it. So there were three very wealthy opponents of them. These pictures are shown. No need to know the names. But these three people, they all died during Titanic sinking. So then we go on further. Then this was now, they increased the money supply during that 4-5 years. And then suddenly during 1920, the loans were called in. Now people were unable to pay because now suddenly there were no more loans, or loans were not like renegotiated. So the people could not pay, maybe the interest rose. I don't know too much details. I'm just telling you in short. So people were unable to pay. So 5,500 banks who loaned to various corporations or to various companies or to various private holdings to people, they went bankrupt and collapsed, and they were bought by Federal Reserve. So Federal Reserve now is becoming stronger and stronger. Then what happened? This is after, you can see the money supply shrank, and it just went down. And then what they did again, they increased the money supply again from 1921 to 1929. So again, providing loans at a very cheap interest rate, increasing the credit again for 8 long years. And then they sold immediately 12 million shares, causing stock market crash, which happened in 2008. Similar to that, it happened on 23rd of October, 1929. Consequently, what happened? People holding shares on credit, people always buy the money and they buy the shares. This is happening now all over the world again. They became bankrupt overnight as share prices fell, stock market crashed, and they couldn't pay back. So you can see this paper cutting, that worst stock market crash stemmed by banks. So 12,000 odd, nearly 13,000 million shares, they swamp market, and leaders confirm and conditions on. So this is what happened. Then suddenly there was a crash in 1929. This was the time of depression. So let's go on to the next slide. This is the face of one of the Rothschild family. In October 1929, loans were called in because of that, and banks and people, those who bought shares on credit, they became bankrupt. This time, 16,000 non-Fed banks went bankrupt. Before it was 5,500, now 16,000, and they were bought by Fed. They reduced the money supply further by less new loans were provided by another 30%, causing starvation. People were starving. They could not buy food because they were not able to pay the loans before. And now they wanted to get some money so that they could buy food. They could not because, again, new loans were provided by 30% less. So Wall Street crash followed by extreme starvation. This was the period where America and probably the world went into depression. And some families got very, very rich. This was the moment they could just buy the bankrupted banks at penny to a dollar. So this was the time when the Fed or the Rothschilds had total dominance, started having total dominance. They still have the dominance. Further, what they did the gold season in 1933 when they asked American public to hand over their gold. Maybe they had a very big plan because they plan in 20, 30 years ahead when whosoever is holding the gold becomes the most powerful country in the world, basically. So they did the gold seizure in 1933. So May 1, under executive orders of the president, all gold coins, gold bullion, and gold certificates now owned by them, a Federal Reserve branch or agency, or to any member. So they had to hand over that. In return, they, of course, gave the dollars of the value then. To top it further, they introduced income tax. Income tax was not there prior to 1930 or 34, around that time, saying that in World War, a lot of money has been spent and the American government is under stress, so everybody chips in and a percentage of their income, net income, should be given as income tax. Income tax, in my opinion, should have been abolished after certain time, but it is still going on. Okay, then came, fast forward, I'm not going to go in details now in between. Then came 1970 petrodollars. What are petrodollars? Oil was discovered and the Gulf country, even prior to 1970, I think 1950 somewhere, oil was discovered and the Gulf countries became extremely wealthy. So Gulf Country Corporation and US, they made a agreement between them, all the Gulf and Middle Eastern companies, to force the rest of the world to do their crude oil export revenues, to earn their revenues in dollars. Like if any any country like Pakistan, India, or UK, or anyone wants to buy crude oil, they have to first buy US dollar, then buy the oil, and if they want to sell it, the Gulf countries, then they have to buy so all these countries started keeping dollar reserves. So, and the US will provide the security in return. This is security with Iran war is in question now. So they are saying, where is the security now? Because Iran is throwing the missiles over all the Gulf countries. So basically what happened, the dollar became a powerful, dominant world currency, fed as a corporation or a company, you can say, and the Rothschild and his fellows and his friends, they are now extremely rich. They are holding the maximum of world's gold. So whosoever, any country which holds the gold, maximum gold, remember that, we are going to come back to this, they are dominant countries and they are powerful and their currency should appreciate. Basically, it's like that. Okay, now this one, I will come back to this before I will show you what is the Bretton Woods Agreement was. So I'll show you with the, yeah. After World War II, the countries got together. Basically, not all the countries, some of the European countries, which we know the dominant countries, UK, Germany, France, from Europe, and USA. So, so they got together, and some other countries also, maybe. I'm not too sure how many, but I'm just telling you the dominant countries. They made an agreement which is called Bretton Woods Agreement, where all the countries, in the majority of the countries in the world, agreed to fix their currencies to US dollar. Before, what was happening, just try to understand, before 1944, this was in 1944, many countries were backed by gold directly. Like India had this much gold, 1 kg gold, and this much rupees. UK had this much gold, 1 kg of gold was backed by, say, whatever the price was then in pounds. But now this ceased. So majority world's countries agreed to fix their currencies to US dollar. And in return, only US dollar decided to tie or value the dollars against the gold. Only one country now. Before, all the countries could do directly. So this was a universal gold standard then. So instead of pure gold standard, which was before, all the countries could do it, and their currencies were backed by gold, the system became now a gold exchange standard. Means first you exchange the dollar, and then whatever your value is against the US dollar, then only you can value it according to what dollar's value is towards to the gold. So understood, instead of pure gold standard, which was independent, like you and me going to the market and buy the gold, but now, and buy at whatever price, but now you had to buy the price set by US dollar.
Yeah.
So US dollar
anywhere in the
again.
world, It's the same price on the day. On
On
one day,
So
where you go, it will be the
in
same
dollars.
price. Yeah.
So they decide the price.
You could
They
be in
dis-
China.
So this was gold exchange standard they followed. So now let's go back. Now the text will make sense to you. But Nixon abolished even that. So what happened in 1944? The Bretton Woods Agreement, where only dollar was tied to gold. In 44, Bretton Woods Agreement created a new global monetary system after World War II. Majority countries agreed to fix their currencies to the US dollar. The US dollar was the only currency directly now tied to gold. At that time, it was $35 per ounce. So now, instead of pure gold standard, where many currencies were backed by gold, the system became a gold exchange standard. So they had to follow how much is the dollar worth to the gold. Now, in 1944, this was the gold standard was abolishing. What happened? Before 1944, many countries used a classical gold standard where their currencies could be directly exchanged for gold. But Bretton Woods in 1944 ended that direct link for most countries. So only US kept the power of gold convertibility. So let's go. What happened in then? Now you know about 1971 agreement with the Gulf countries about petrodollars, which I just told you. Now, in President Nixon abolished the gold standard also in 1971, making the dollar all powerful and all supreme. Over time, the pressure built on the US kept on printing more dollars. Then it had gold. So before, it was agreed that suppose they had 3 tons of gold. So they were allowed to have US government or the Federal Reserve, which we talked about earlier, were allowed to have only that many dollars. So now they printed more dollars than the dollars, the value tied to the gold. So what happens when you do that? Inflation rises.
Printing more money.
Printing more money, which has continued.
Yes.
So it started in 1971. So in 1971, Richard Nixon stopped the dollar's convertibility into gold. And dollar became independent dominant currency. Now the dollar has become more powerful than the gold became sort of in the background. But many countries remained back to dollars, especially the Gulf countries. Even today, they remain back to dollar. This effectively ended the gold standard globally and led to today's system of floating fiat currencies, which we hear about. In one line, how do you describe it? Bretton Woods didn't fully abolish gold at first in 1941, but they sort of centralized it. Now you have to understand that concept which we are going to discuss. Anything which becomes centralized, the central power becomes very dominant and powerful. So now many countries or many people in the country, because of the huge awakening, they want a decentralized state, that we are a village, or we are a small place, a city. We do not want to follow the laws given by the center. So this is what is happening. So whenever it becomes centralized, the center becomes all powerful and more abusive or manipulative. If they should.
So we're still talking about within the states. But
Right now we are.
Yeah.
But it is all tied to us also as we go.
Okay.
Because why
Is it tied
dollar
to
is
the-
being devalued now?
Okay.
Is it
So-
tied to the UK?
Of course. And the final break from gold came in 1971 when dollar became independent to gold. So far so clear. So we see here in this slide which I made, that currencies were tied to the dollar. Dollar was gold was back to the dollar. But later on, what happened? This happened in 1944 up until 1971 when this relationship dissolved. There's no arrow here. So gold and dollar relationship ended. So now dominant dollar, they can print the dollars, they can decide, they can increase the value of the dollar, which we see in many countries. Why our currencies were going down and the dollar is becoming, a dollar price relatively is becoming higher and higher. So dominant dollar is back to crude oil, petrodollar. Countries could only buy and sell in dollars. So this is very clear up until now, why Fed became very powerful and also their currency. How the dollar became very powerful effectively from 1944, but became more powerful from 1971. What happened then? More fiat currency was printed, and it led to 2002 dot-com crash. I remember I was into stock market then. I had lots of technology shares. I was a computer programmer, so I knew technology well. And with that crash, even I lost a lot of money. And then in 2008, the stock market also crashed, which many people, I think all of us somewhere here, we lost money in stock market. And that was the time many countries, maybe within themselves, they understood the workings of US dollar, its dominance, and how various currencies were being destroyed. So the countries, 5 countries initially, now they're 11 or 12, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, they began meeting formally in 2009. Why BRICS was formed? what was the goal? To increase the global influence of emerging economies, because their currencies were regularly devalued against dollar, to reduce dependence on Western-led system like IMF and World Bank. What I have heard and what I have been, this is not my opinion. This information can be checked in Google at any time. So my private, my personal opinions, sometimes I speak out that these are my personal opinions, but they are also opinions of many others as well. So what was happening, any country was in financial distress would apply for a loan through IMF, which is International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. Now, these two big organizations were created to basically, people say, to promote dollars. So once you apply the loans, emerging markets, they were applying for loans because of financial stress, then they would be asked to sign an agreement with their terms and conditions. So basically, the BRICS was formed to promote trade and cooperation within the member countries, so that we don't have to convert every time to dollars. So it's like anytime you do a bank transaction, anytime you buy or sell, then they cut a small percentage. And that small percentage looks very small to you. But imagine, it's on a large scale. In one person does minimum 10 to 12 transactions in a day through cards, and through Visa cards or through online. Everybody does that. So every time you are changing shape of currency, so a small cut is going to them. So this is making, yeah. So and then they wanted to push for most balanced global financial system. They wanted to have that. So they are in future less dominated by US dollar. This was the goal. Initially, when this was formed, they were very small. So, and now the BRICS have become comparatively very large, not very large, but reasonably large in the sense that many other countries have also joined them. So now, 3 processes currently are undergoing. De-radicalization, which is also sort of connected to dollar, we're going to talk about. Decolonization, when we instead of stop thinking about what media is giving us, and we start using our own mind. That is the decolonization. We stop using the programming. So we start using whether it's benefiting us or not, because the media will project what is benefited to them. And then there is a process of de-dollarization, where now people are, behind their currency's valuation should go up. And instead of every time they have to convert into dollar, they should be able to convert, and this process I've also started in 2022 when they sanctioned Russia. So India kept on buying the crude oil from them. So how it happened during 2008, banks sought shelter in gold and silver. Whenever there is a stock market crash, people and the banks, they run towards gold and silver.
Yes, they do.
And when the stock market crash happens and when the stock market recovers, then the money again comes from gold and silver reserves, and then people start putting into equities. So now you can see it here, the graph which I've drawn for you. In 2008, you can see the gold went up. Here also, 2008, you can see the first arrow. The silver went up. This lasted till 2011, and then the gold started coming down. Gold started coming down, and then it remained stable for a very long time till, I think, what is the... 2014, actually, it happened. Then when it started rising up. So why we are here, why we are discussing here, because a lot of money, not only public's money, individual people, but also the banks are pushing their holdings into gold and silver reserves. So seeing the uprise of gold and silver in their prices, we can sort of speculate, or rather we can see it, not speculate, we can directly see it, that something is shifting at a very high level. And if we are not prepared, then we can be under some sort of financial stress. So now I will stop the first part of the series here so we can open the floor for discussion. So I stop recording and then we follow why the dollar was kept alive and dominant in the next part. So I stop recording.